Hey 8th graders, today we're going to go back to actually a 5th grade skill that we haven't probably touched since 5th grade, and it's adding fractions together that have unlike denominators. So when I say unlike denominators, there's two parts of the fraction. There's the numerator and the denominator, and unlike denominators are when you're trying to add two fractions together if the denominators are unlike, which means that they are dissimilar or not the same. So you'll see in this fraction 1/4 that the denominator of 4 is unlike the denominator of 8. And so thus, when we're adding fractions with unlike denominators, we have to do a really important thing. And here's our rule for when we're adding fractions. In order to add fractions together, the denominator must be the same. Go ahead and take that important piece of information and write it into your notes. I'm going to store it over here for the time being. So right now our denominators are not the same. We need to create equivalent fractions so the denominators are the same. So we are looking for the least common multiple of our denominator 4 and 8. Some of us may think back to 6th grade when we did this, where we take 4 times 1 equals 4. Sorry, that's a 4. 4 times 2 equals 8. 4 times 3 equals 12. We do the same thing with the 8s. We do 8 times 1 equals 8. 8 times 2 equals 16. Anyway, we're looking for the smallest number that they have in common. Well, right now I already see a number that both of them have in common. That least common denominator is 8, or the least common multiple is 8. So that's what we want our denominator to be. Let's change 1/4 into a fraction so it has a denominator of 8. Well, 1/4 is equivalent to what over 8? Or 1/4 is equivalent to how many eighths? Well, I know I can go from 4 to 8 by multiplying by 2. So 1 times 2, I know that 2 eighths are equivalent to 1/4. So I'm just going to rewrite my fraction of 1/4 down here. That's the same thing as 2 eighths. You can also draw a picture if that's helpful. Here's a picture of 1/4. I know that that is equal to the same thing as 2 out of 8 if you see that this quantity of 1 out of 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces is the same as 2 out of 8 pieces. So we made 1/4 have a denominator of 8. We also want 3/8 to have a denominator of 8. Well, lucky us, it already does have a denominator of 8. And now that my denominators are the same, I can go ahead and add. If I have 2 eighths and I'm adding 3 eighths, then I have a total of 5 eighths. And we can represent this with a picture as well. I have a figure that's broken into 8 pieces right here, and if I have 2 eighths, which is represented by my first number right here, 2 eighths, and I add 3 more eighths to it, 1, 2, 3, then I have a total of 5 out of 8, which is how I got my answer, 5 eighths. We're going to do 2 more problems. So we need to take a look at this problem. We want to add these fractions together, and there's something that we should be thinking immediately, and it's all the way up here, so we can bring it down in order. To add fractions together, the denominator must be the same. So if I'm looking at this problem, are my denominators the same? No, they are not. So I need to find the least common multiple that these two numbers would share. Again, you can do 3 times 1, 3 times 2, but that might take a little while, and you'll start to catch on real quickly, and you'll be able to see what those numbers are. My least common multiple of 3 and 5, or my least common denominator, is going to be 15. That's a number I can take both 3 and 5 and multiply it by to get. And so now I need to change this 2/3 plus 1/5 into something over 15 plus something over 15. So let's start with the 2/3. I'm doing that all the way down here. 2/3, I want to know what does that equal out of 15? Well, I can go from 3 to 15 by multiplying by 5, so I also need to multiply my numerator by 5. So 2/3 is equal to 10/15. And now I want to figure out what 1/5 is equal to. Well, 1/5 is here. What would that be out of 15 if it was cut into 15 pieces instead? How do I go from 5 to 15? That's times 3. So I need to do the same thing on top. 1 times 3 gives me 3. So I know that 2/3 plus 1/5 is the same thing as 10/15 plus 3/15. Again, when I'm adding these together, the denominator has to be the same, and then if the denominator is the same, my final answer also shares that same denominator. And 10 plus 3 is 13. 13/15 is the answer to 2/3 plus 1/5. Here's our last problem. 1/6 plus 3/4. Now the first thing you should be telling yourself is I'm adding fractions together. The denominator has to be the same. So what is the least common denominator? Some people might have thought of 24 right away, but there's one that's a little bit smaller. You can do 24, but you'll have to simplify. I know that there's one a little bit smaller, and that is 12. I can take 6 times something to get 12. I can also take 4 times something to get 12. So let's go ahead and figure that out. 1/6 is equal to what out of 12? It's equivalent to how many twelfths? Well, I know I can multiply this by 2, so that's equal to 2 out of 12. And I want to know 3/4 is equal to how much out of 12, or how many twelfths? Well, I can go from 4 to 12 by multiplying by 3, so I'm going to do the same thing on top. 3 times 3 gives me 9. So I know that this is the same as 2/12 plus 9/12. My denominators are the same, so I can add. My denominator stays 12, and 2 plus 9 is 11. We get 11/12. We did not have to simplify on any of these problems. You may have to on your worksheet, and you may have to when you get up front. You have the rest of your worksheet, both sides to do. Good luck.